Hello guys, welcome back to Anime Moments. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Against the Gods based on novel. So let's start explanation. Xia Qingyu answered, "It is my personal wish, and also the sect's intention. He is after all, my husband. As his wife, I cannot just turn a cold shoulder. He and my sect are well acquainted, and he has also done favors for my sect. Our Asgard mistress expected that after Burning Heaven clan is annihilated, Senior would definitely act, thus she requested Qingyu to make sure she come here, and ask Senior to grant our sect a little face. Asgard mistress promises that she'll definitely visit the Heavenly Sword Villa to pay her gratitude at a future date." Surprise flashed through Ling Qianli's face. He hadn't expected that Frozen Cloud Asgard would actually use the sect's name in order to save Yunche. But after exchanging blows with Yunche for a while, he had felt shock and dread in his heart several times, and had already decided that Yunche absolutely could not be spared, otherwise, the future troubles would be endless. I naturally wouldn't view the Honorable Asgard's face as nothing, but Yunche's sins are overwhelmingly heinous, and he definitely cannot be spared. Xia Qingyu let out a faint sigh, and the Ice Phoenix Snowflower ribbon fell from the sky, circling and dancing around her body of ice. "Since Senior insists on doing so, then forgive this junior for her offense." As Xia Qingyu's voice fell, the Ice Phoenix Snowflower ribbon suddenly swung, flinging out an ice chain that was nearly 100 meters long, as her body also descended, bringing along a bone-piercing chill. That ice chain fluttered near, as if a flying snake of ice. With Ling Qianli's realm, even though such an attack was swift and fierce, it wasn't to the extent of being any threat to him at all. But seeing the nearing chain of ice, his expression wavered yet once again. Just as the ice chain was about to wrap onto his body, his arm extended and raised up. Instantly, golden light explosively shot out from his body all of a sudden, and golden-colored profound energy, as well as shapeless sword intent, flooded out. He did not swing his sword, yet a golden-colored sword handle appeared in front of him. And the sword's body was shockingly his own body. With his body as the sword, Ling Qianli slashed forward. His eyes that were as billowless as a dried well emitted a light even harsher and sharper than the sword's beam. Space was compressed inch by inch everywhere the sword tip reached, and an increasingly deep trench was carved into the ground by the impact. This kind of sword force made everyone hold their breaths. They only felt that even though they were several kilometers away, their bodies still felt like they were about to be pulverized from such a terrifying sword force's pressure. The Sword Saint's terror had completely surpassed their scope of comprehension. Could Xia Qingyu even defend against such a sword strike? Accompanying a chain of shattering noises, Xia Qingyu's ice chain was entirely destroyed, turning into shattered ice dispersing all over the sky. Facing the Sword Saint's golden sword beam, Xia Qingyu's snow-white face was completely calm. Blue light abruptly emerged from her whole body, and tens of thousands of ice spirits suddenly left her body, weaving into an enormous stretch of an ice blue-colored screen of light, sealing the sword beam that came at her along with Ling Qianli within it. Swoosh! The energy of ice and sword intent simultaneously erupted as golden-colored and blue-colored light chaotically collided and entwined, destroying each other. The air was violently pushed aside, and the chaotic streams of air swept up waves after waves of rampant storms. At first, the golden sword beam was at an immense advantage, shattering the blue-colored ice spirits by the chunks, but right after, the speed that the sword beam assaulted became increasingly slower, and more sword beams were even directly frozen and shattered. Bang! The two's profound strength surged at the same time, and then they simultaneously retreated back over 100 meters. The ground beneath them had deeply caved under in an exaggerated fashion. The shattered ice crystals covering the sky quickly fell, covering the caved-in ground with a thick layer of ice. Ling Qianli's head, shoulders, and even the sword were all covered with a layer of thick frost, and he actually looked to be in a slightly sorry state. With a shift of his profound energy, all the ice crystals were blasted away. When he looked at Xia Qingyu again, the expression in his eyes were once again completely different from before. The expression on his face, more so, made no secret of that astonishment and exclamation of praise coming from the depth of his heart. "So it really isn't Frozen Cloud Arts? Could it be? You have actually already cultivated Frozen End Divine Arts?" The moment "Frozen End Divine Art" was spoken, everyone present were all at a loss. However, Ling Jie's body shook, and revealed an extremely shocked expression. Everyone all knew that the core profound art of Frozen Cloud Asgard was Frozen Cloud Arts. But very few know that Frozen Cloud Asgard also had a series of profound arts far surpassing Frozen Cloud Arts in might. Frozen End Divine Arts. As the inheritor of Heavenly Sword Villa's Villa Master's bloodline, Ling Jian knew a secret very well. His ancestor 1,000 years ago, who was also the founder of Heavenly Sword Villa, had lost to a person within Blue Wind Empire before, and also had only ever lost to one person. That was precisely the founder of Frozen Cloud Asgard, Mu Bingyun. Back then, Heavenly Sword Founder's cultivation was at the 8th level of the Emperor Profound Realm and his Heavenly Sword Divine Art had reached the peak of perfection. Mu Bingyun was only at the 6th level of the Emperor Profound Realm, 2 levels lower than him. Yet amongst the 3 battles between him and Mu Bingyun, he had lost all of them under her Frozen End Divine Arts. According to the records left by the Heavenly Sword Founder, Frozen End Divine Arts was an unparalleled profound art that far surpassed Heavenly Sword Divine Arts, and wasn't even inferior to the level of Sacred Grounds. Cultivating Frozen Cloud Art to the extreme could freeze all objects, and even freeze profound strength and profound energy. But Mu Bingyun's Frozen End Divine Arts could even freeze his sword intent, sword heart, and even his heart and soul. Only, in order to cultivate Frozen End Divine Arts, not only would one need Frozen Cloud Art as foundation, one would also need an extremely high comprehension ability. However, after Mu Bingyun established Frozen Cloud Asgard, 1,000 years later, no one had ever successfully cultivate Frozen End Divine Art from start to finish. This mighty profound art that was acclaimed by the Heavenly Sword Founder to surpass the Heavenly Sword Divine Art, had also been gradually forgotten amidst the 1,000 years, and only the other 3 major sects had records of it. Facing Ling Qianni's gaze of exclamation, Xie Qingyu didn't speak. But her silence was tacit acknowledgement. Frozen End Divine Art appearing in the world once again, endlessly stirred Ling Qianni's heart. He said with a sigh, I didn't expect that I could actually personally witness the legendary Frozen End Divine Art. With a successor like you, Frozen Asgard would definitely rise up in glory. If you could use Frozen End Divine Art to perfection, reaching the legendary realm of freezing the sword intent and soul, perhaps I wouldn't be your match even today. Yet it is evident that you have just reached the fundamental level. It is impossible for the current you to be my match. You should withdraw. Ling Qianni's body rushed straight out, the green sword in his hand swiftly slashed. Instantly, the sword's force soared in the air, swallowing all beneath the heavens. The golden-colored sword beam that blotted out the sun cut apart space, and also seemed to split the sky apart from the middle. Under the imposing force of this sword, the crowd actually had a feeling that even the heavens and earth were about to be severed. The Ice Phoenix Snowflower ribbon faintly trembled, and uttered a moan as thought it couldn't bear the heavy burden. Even the fluttering of the ice spirits had also begun to slow down. Xie Qingyue's expression still stayed the same, like a sculpture of ice and snow that wouldn't melt in tens of thousands of years. As she opened her arms wide, her complexion suddenly became entirely snow-white, and even her fluttering long hair had instantly become light blue like that of ice crystals. An ice-cold yet glamorous ice lotus bloomed extravagantly in front of her body. Cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha? The blooming ice lotus and the sword-saint sky-cleaving strike fiercely clashed, and the golden and blue-colored light once again chaotically interweaved, but the stalemate only lasted for 10 breaths of time. The golden sword beam's light suddenly became increasingly powerful, violently suppressing and engulfing the ice-blue light. Just like Ling Qianni had said, even though Xie Qingyu had successfully cultivated the Frozen End Divine Art, she had merely learned the rudiments. After all, from her studying to cultivating, merely half a year had passed in total. In such a short amount of time, even if her comprehension ability was extremely great, she could only cultivate Frozen End Divine Art to the 3rd stage. Furthermore, with Ling Qianni's 100 years of cultivation, his profound energy was incomparably rich and thick, far surpassing Xie Qingyu. To be able to form a stalemate with Ling Qianni was already a feat enough to look down upon the world with pride. Bang! The frozen end lotus completely bursted apart, and Xie Qingyue's body was blown far away. Forming a sword with his body, Ling Qianni slashed down. Xie Qingyu assaulting him without any hesitation at all clearly showed that she was hell-bent on saving Yunche. Then, if he wanted to kill Yunche, he had to first make Xie Qingyu lose the capability to fight. The golden-colored sword beam pierced through more than half of Xie Qingyu's protective profound energy in the blink of an eye, as if piercing through bamboo. And at this time, a surge of extremely ferocious storm suddenly flooded at him from behind. "Are you treating me as if I don't exist?" Yun Che's entire body burned with phoenix flames. The black hair on his head unbridledly hung astray, like a raging devil. His eyes were as red as blood. His vicious face, as well as the terrifying power swing out by the dragon fault, made even the Sword Saint's heart stop for a moment. His body turned around with the quickest speed, and the sword beam retracted from Xie Qingyu's direction, meeting dragon fault with full force. Boom! Heavy sword against the green sword, without any fancy tricks at all. A frightening noise exploded between Yun Che and Ling Qianmi. The profound energy storm directly caused the ground to deeply cave in, as sand and stone blotted out the sky. The terror of the imposing might wasn't at all inferior to a roar from the sea. Direct smash attacks close in proximity was precisely the greatest advantage of the heavy sword. Under the explosive strength of Dragon Fault, even the Sword Saint's entire body greatly shook as his right arm instantly went numb. Yun Che's gaze was vicious, the veins of both his arms popped up, and with a low cry, the second wave of strength flooded out from his body and erupted once again. Boom! As though he had been swept away by a storm, Ling Qianmi was flung far away, and was only able to stabilize his posture in midair after being sent over 150 meters outwards. Yun Che's body quickly fell back, and staggered as he landed. He quickly walked over to Xie Qingyu's side, his gaze falling to her thin and tender body as he asked, "Qingyu, you okay? Why didn't you leave earlier?" Xie Qingyu's charming eyes were devoid of expression, her voice gentle yet ice-cold. "It's been so long since we've met, and when we finally met, your first sentence is actually for me to leave." Yun Che had on an expression of being heartbroken. "Isn't the role of wife that you are playing a bit too heartless?" Xie Qingyu's gaze fell onto his face, lingered for a bit, then silently left. She said quietly, "Senior Sword Saint's might is not something I can match. Shortly, I will do all I can to delay him for 30 breaths of time. You should flee with all your strength. The current situation is not something you. The reason why I didn't leave wasn't because I was being conceited, but was because he simply isn't able to kill me." Yun Che interrupted her words. His steps shifted forward, and stood beside Xie Qingyu. He pressed his hand onto his chest, and said with a low voice, "Since I dared to appear before him, then I naturally had the confidence to not be killed by him. I had originally decided that after contending with him for a bit that I'll flee far away, but now, I've changed my mind." On Yun Che's chest, 3 balls of scarlet-colored flames that came from who knew where suddenly began to burn. Yun Che half narrowed his eyes. "Even though Ling Qianmi is extremely strong, our current level of power isn't the difference of cloud and mud compared him either. When exchanging blows with him earlier, he had already been forcefully exhausted of 40% of his strength. If we join forces, it may not necessarily be impossible to defeat him." Whoosh! Flames surged up on Yun Che's body as the 3 drops of phoenix blood began to crazily burn. His aura that had been largely weakened also sharply rose at this moment. Initially, he had planned on fleeing using the power exchanged by burning the phoenix blood as the price, but Xie Qingyu's appearance made him change his plans. He will mercilessly thwart this Sword Saint, whose existence was like the Judicator under everyone's eyes within this imperial city, and make him pay the price that he had to pay. What? Yun Che's sudden change caused the inside of Ling Qianmi's heart to immensely shake, because his aura that was originally weak to the extent of being less than 10% of his normal strength, had actually surged sharply all of a sudden when the flames flared up, instantly reaching his condition before the fight. No, even surpassing his condition before. The extensiveness of Ling Qianmi's experience on the way of cultivating the profound could be said as unmatched by anyone. Yet on Yun Che, anomalies that he was unable to comprehend continuously appeared one after another. This was the second time Yun Che had directly burned the phoenix's blood. This would make him directly overdraft all of the power within these 3 drops of phoenix blood, and the price was that he wouldn't be able to use the phoenix flames again for the next 2 or 3 months. As he clenched both fists tightly, 2 distinct balls of scarlet flames burned within his eyes. "Qingyu, the power in my body can at most last for 20 breaths of time. I need to borrow the help of your frozen cloud domain. I must make him face miserable defeat before me, within 20 breaths of time. To make the Sword Saint face miserable defeat within 20 breaths of time could only be considered an extremely funny joke to anyone's ears. Xie Qingyue's gaze faintly rippled, and just as she was about to say something, Yunche had already vaulted up toward the skies with a loud roar. Dragon Fault blasted out several strokes of phoenix flames, bringing about dragon howls and phoenix cries that shook the heavens. Xie Qingyu faintly sighed in her heart. Without any further words, she flew up as the ice phoenix snowflower ribbon swung out overwhelming auroras of ice. Phoenix flames and frozen end, one left one right, simultaneously blasted toward Ling Qinmi. It was as if Ling Qinmi's body was instantly half thrown in lava, and half in the purgatory of ice. With a swing of his green sword, he swept up an immensely vast sword energy, cutting apart the phoenix flames and frozen end at the same time. Yunche and Xie Qingyu also approached his front at this moment. Qingyu! Yunche uttered a low shout from his mouth. Several tens of ice chains condensed out of nothing, sealing all of the escape routes around Ling Qinmi. Xie Qingyue's hair of ice fluttered as a blue light explosively flashed on her entire body. Tens of thousands of ice spirits scattered apart, and the surrounding 300 meters of area instantly transformed into an ice-blue world. Frozen Cloud Domain. Open. The air suddenly became bone-piercingly cold, and the Sword Saint's movements instantly appeared to stall as the force of his sword had also been weakened to a large extent. However, even though Frozen Cloud Domain was enough to cause hindrance to the Sword Saint, it wasn't enough to be threatening to him. Ling Qinmi swept the green sword upwards with an indifferent expression. As a noise of the air being pierced sounded, an extremely long fissure emerged on the ice-blue domain. Heavenly Sword Divine Arts can easily cut through various types of domain. Unless you suppress me in terms of profound strength, using domains before me would be completely useless and will only speed up your profound energy expenditure. Ling Qinmi spoke in an indifferent tone. Just as his voice fell, he suddenly sensed an extremely eccentric aura. His hand's movement stopped as he abruptly turned around and looked toward Yunche. Currently, Yunche's eyes emitted a shocking touch of an azure-colored fantastical light. Behind him, an azure-colored image indistinctly floated and drifted. That shadow roared toward the heavens with fangs bared and claws spread, appearing majestic and awe-inspiring. Even though it was indistinct and hazy, it was unleashing an prideful air that looked down upon the entire world. It was actually an azure-colored dragon silhouette. An imposing and overbearing dragon roar descended from the heavens, shaking one's soul as it traveled through the world. 3 feet above Yunche's head was a pair of azure-colored eyes as blinding as the stars, and as profound as the skies, that suddenly opened. Ling Qinmi's entire body went stiff when he saw this pair of azure-colored eyes. His entire person froze there, with only his pupils expanding, until they almost filled up the iris. The surrounding light darkened until it became pitch black. He seemed to have heard hundreds of thousands of thunderbolts rumbling down, and also seemed to have heard dragon cries that made the heaven and earth tremble in fear. His brain was in completely chaos, he forgot where he was, and also forgot what he was doing. Gradually, before his eyes, scenes after scenes of nightmarish pictures began to emerge. He saw himself being defeated by Yunche, then crippled of all profound strength with all meridians in his entire body severed, and all his bones broken. Turning into a cripple even lower than a beggar who was not even able to die if he wished to from a sword saint that stood proudly upon the world. After that, because of being hunted down by him, Yunche vented his anger onto the entire Heavenly Sword Villa, killing all of his descendants, torturing all of the Heavenly Sword Villa disciples to death, and those Heavenly Sword female disciples who had good looks were all raped by him. All of the swords at the Sword Management Terrace were all destroyed by him, and the entire Heavenly Sword Villa bursted into flames. The Heavenly Sword Villa at the pinnacle of Blue Wind was turned into the most wretched hell on earth by him. And he, as a cripple, could only watch all of these with his eyes open under endless despair. At this time, Yunche appeared before his view. He was hideously grinning at him. Right after, Yunche suddenly flew, reached the high skies, and transformed into an enormous dragon. An incomparably gigantic dragon that crossed even the boundaries of the sky. Its body was tens of thousands of meters long, and merely the dragon's head was as big as a mountain. A terrifyingly imposing air so enormous that it was indescribable pressed down overwhelmingly. Beneath this enormous imposing air, he felt as though he was as insignificant as a grain of sand between heaven and earth. Ling Qianni's entire body started trembling as if he was suffering from a cold. As the Sword Saint, it was the first time in his life that he had feared another. Moreover, it was a kind of fear that was deeply carved into his soul and couldn't be wiped away for the rest of his life. Under this kind of fear, his limbs went limp as his entire body trembled. He actually had the impulse to kneel down before him and beg for mercy. Dragon Soul Domain wasn't a power that belonged to this plane of existence, so even if it was Ling Qianni, he simply couldn't resist against it at all. The profound energy in Ling Qianni's entire body weakened extremely quickly. His pupils constricted, and his entire body was clearly trembling acutely. However, the Dragon Soul Domain could only be kept up for around 5 breaths of time even when Yunche was in perfect condition, and with Yunche's current state, 3 breaths of time was already the limit. But a short 3 breaths of time was already enough to send Ling Qianni into the abyss of nightmares. 3 breaths later, Dragon Soul Domain vanished. Ling Qianni's mental strength was still incomparably strong. In almost just an instant, clarity had already returned to his eyes. But Yunche's dragon fault was already less than 1 foot away from his chest, while his body was also completely frozen by the frozen cloud domain within these 3 breaths of time, unable to move at all. Under the double domain, Ling Qianni's spirit, strength, and defense all had collapsed. Falling moon, sinking star. Boom! The ferocious sword strike heavily smashed onto Ling Qianni's chest. With a loud noise, the layers of ice at Ling Qianni's chest instantly bursted apart as his entire person flew outwards like a cannonball. With Ling Qianni's tremendous profound strength, even though it would end badly for him, being directly smashed by Yunche's sword strike wouldn't cause him to be heavily injured. But under the Dragon Soul Domain, his spirit and profound strength collapsed entirely, and that layer of protective profound energy didn't reach even 30% of his usual. Although he channeled his profound energy with the fastest limit of his speed, under the continuous freezing of the frozen cloud domain, his entire body was stiff and numb, and even the channeling of profound energy became incomparably slow. Yunche's falling moon sinking star directly smashed his innards away from their initial positions. Empyrean Dance of the Phoenix. Phoenix flames fiercely burned on Yunche's body and phoenix wings faintly appeared behind his back. His entire person brought up a stroke of scarlet-colored light in the sky, instantly catching up to the Ling Qianni who was flying backwards, and Dragon Fault violently smashed down. Boom! 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 The heavy sword blasted onto Ling Qianni's body in a chain combination, with each strike heavier than the previous. Every single strike that fell had all brought up a rumble that shook the heavens and earth. All of the surrounding crowd was stunned in pace. Even if they had witnessed it with their own eyes, and heard it with their own ears, they still couldn't believe that such power was blasted out by a sword. This kind of sound and might was like the profound thunder of the 9 heavens shaking the earth. It could be imagined just how terrifying of a power was hidden within every single sword strike. Under the frozen cloud domain's continuous freezing and Dragon Fault's consecutive smashing, let alone turning around and counter-attack, even the last of the profound energy supporting him was gradually nearing collapse. The strength that Yunche crazily released also was nearing exhaustion bit by bit. Taking in a deep breath, he looked at Ling Qianni, who was already entirely covered in blood with both arms smashed broken. He raised Dragon Fault high as a howling image of the Sky Wolf emerged behind him. Sky Wolf slash. Boss. Just as the Sky Wolf slash was about to be smashed down, Ling Jie's hoarse shout faintly traveled to his ears. His action stalled slightly, and he instantly retracted 60% of the Sky Wolf slash's power. Bang! The blue-colored wolf image crushed onto Ling Qianni's chest, and a ball of blood wildly blew up from his chest. Seeing that flower of blood blooming, Yunche's hands that held the sword slowly drooped down as a wave of irresistible heaviness assaulted his brain. He let out a long breath, and his entire body plummeted down powerlessly. Frozen cloud domain vanished. As a faint shadow swept through, the falling Yunche was already lightly supported up by Xia Qingyu using her palm, then slowly landed onto the ground. On the other side, Ling Qianni also heavily fell onto the ground. Ling Jie uttered a loud shout, and swiftly ran over, kneeling halfway beside him. This place was within the Blue Wind Imperial City, so the crowd was already incredibly dense from the start. Those who were attracted here had long surpassed 100,000. Yet at this moment, such an enormous crowd of people was completely silent. Every single person was absent-mindedly looking at that stretch of completely destroyed land, and had almost lost the ability to think. Sword Saint, the unparalleled #1 within Blue Wind, actually lost. Anyone could tell that after those consecutive dozens of strikes from Yunche, Ling Qianni had clearly received incomparably heavy injuries. Especially that last attack, his chest had completely bursted open, and perhaps, even the inner organs were already completely destroyed. This young man who had only risen to fame 2 years ago, within a short 2 years of time, he grew in an unimaginable speed, and established one legend after another. Champion of the Blue Wind Ranking Tournament. Crushing Burning Heaven Clan Young Master's bridal greeting. Massacring Burning Heaven Clan to annihilation. Today, he had actually heavily wounded Ling Qianni. Defeating this Blue Wind #1 evidently meant that he was already qualified enough to replace Ling Qianni, and become the new #1 of Blue Wind. And this year, he was only a mere 19 years old. How are you feeling? Xie Qingyu supported Yunche, only feeling that his body was completely limp, with barely a single sliver of strength left. All of the power that Yunche had suddenly exploded with came from the Phoenix Flames. At the moment, his Phoenix Flames were completely extinguished, and the 3 drops of Phoenix blood that burnt up all of their power had also sunk into a state of silence that would last 2 or 3 months, thus, his body was now completely exhausted of strength as well. Moreover, together with opening the soul domain earlier, his consciousness also became completely drowsy. It could be said without the slightest bit of exaggeration that the current Yunche could even be killed by any random profound practitioner at the elementary profound realm. I'm fine, just somewhat tired. Calming his aura, Yunche spoke as he breathed heavily. A heavenly opposing strength like the Dragon Soul domain completely suppressed everything in terms of level and natural law, allowing him to forcefully create such a result when facing against the Sword Saint that was originally impossible for him to beat. The state of Ling Qianni's injuries were extremely serious, and he only barely managed to stand up after being supported by Ling Jie. After he rose to fame, this was the only time he had lost, and he had actually lost to a youth whose strength was far weaker than him. Compared to the wounds on his body, the impact to his spirit was much, much heavier. Moreover, within his soul, even an inner demon that was forever impossible to erase had been planted within his heart due to that terrifying Dragon Soul domain. The state of Ling Qianni's injuries were extremely serious. If the wound on his chest was a little deeper, it would have been enough to destroy his internal organs. He understood very clearly that Yunche had shown mercy in the last attack. Not only was more than half of the power suddenly retracted, even the target of the attack had deviated from his vitals. He made a long sigh in his heart, and said to Ling Jie with a frail voice, "Let us depart." Ling Jie didn't speak, and was about to leave, bringing Ling Qianni. At this moment, Yunche's ice-cold voice came from there behind, "Ling Qianni, you want to leave just like that?" Ling Jie's footsteps stalled, and Ling Qianni also faintly shook. And Ling Jie had actually clearly felt Ling Qianni's body tremble. That's right, it was trembling. Moreover, it seemed to be a tremble from fear. The moment such a thing like a demon of the heart was planted down, even such an unparalleled expert at the level of the Sword Saint would find it extremely difficult to free oneself and resist against it. Yunche stared at Ling Qianni with a menacing gaze. "Leaving just like that, are you not afraid that I'll hold a grudge in my heart because of this, and one day slaughter my way into Heavenly Sword Villa, transforming your Heavenly Sword Villa into a second Burning Heaven clan? Do not doubt whether or not I have the capability to do this. 3 years ago, I didn't possess the slightest bit of profound strength. 1.5 years ago, I took the first place of the ranking tournament. Now I can single-handedly annihilate Burning Heaven clan. Even though I cannot defeat you alone right now, and it is more so impossible to destroy the Heavenly Sword Villa at the moment, in 2 years, if I am given at most 2 more years of time, I'd be able to transform Heavenly Sword Villa into rubble as easily as lifting a hand. Do you believe it or not?" In 3 years of time, from no profound strength at all, to being capable to heavily wound Ling Qianni, this kind of speed of growth could be said as unheard of in all history, and could shock the entire world, even to the extent of making one shiver without feeling cold. No one could imagine just how terrifying of a realm Yunche's strength would reach in 2 more years of time with such a speed of growth. Perhaps at that time, he really would be able to single-handedly match the entire Heavenly Sword Villa. Ling Qianni's body trembled once again. A junior not even 20 years of age yelling to annihilate Heavenly Sword Villa originally ought to be an extremely funny joke, but not only was Ling Qianni unable to laugh, he instead felt his entire body turn cold. Even assuming he didn't have the inner demon, these few words of Yunche were still enough to make his innards shake with fright. Because today, he had already personally experienced Yunche's terror. Even he was already very much regretting coming to hunt Yunche down. In the end, not only was he unable to kill Yunche, he had instead received grave injuries, and was also left with an inner demon. Furthermore, he had invited in an extremely frightening enemy for Heavenly Sword Villa. But worry not, I won't, Yunche said as he slightly clenched his teeth, because the person who wished to kill me was only you, and not the entire Heavenly Sword Villa. And even you, I did not kill. Because little Jie is my brother, and I absolutely am not willing to strike and kill his loved ones. The reason why I am saying these is to let you know that I am not the utterly vicious and evil person in your words. What I do, who I kill, I have my own standard and bottom line. The enmity between me and Burning Heaven clan does not implicate anyone else at all. If Burning Heaven clan's remnants or descendants comes to seek revenge with me, then that is right and proper. Yet you, Ling Qianni, you are just an outsider who knows nothing at all. In what justification do you have to appear before me with the role of judicator, and even claim that you would execute justice in place of the heavens? Even though I still have enough strength left to kill you, I'll spare your life today. Later on, I won't go find trouble for Heavenly Sword Villa either. If you still think that I am that kind of diabolic person devoid of all humanity, then you can feel free to come kill me again when your injuries are healed. Ling Qianni closed his eyes, and let out a long sigh. Perhaps, it really was I, who was mistaken. Since I have already lost today, in the future, it would more so be impossible to kill you. I also genuinely hope that I am indeed mistaken. Jia, let's go. Ling Jia turned his head around and glanced at Yunche. The expression in his eyes had gratitude, admiration, and also had a complicatedness that couldn't be put into words. In the end, he didn't say anything, turned back around, supported Ling Qianni up the fierce zephyr bird, and took off to the skies. Phew! Yunche let out a long breath as his entire person powerlessly fell down and just happened to lean onto Xie Qingyu's soft chest. He closed his eyes, and said with a faint voice, Qingyu, don't leave yet, for a period of time from now on. I need your protection. After he finished speaking, Yunche's consciousness could no longer hold up, and sunk into complete blank vacancy. When the news came, Xiao Jietian's hands and feet turned ice cold, his scalp became numb, and his head almost even bursted apart. Are what you've said all true? Undoubtedly true. Xiao Buyan spoke with a solemn expression. Ling Qianni indeed acted based on our expectations, and even chased to the Blue Wind Imperial City. But not only was he unable to kill Yunche in their fight, he was instead gravely wounded by Yunche and Xie Qingyu joining forces. Yunche deliberately held back in the end, otherwise, perhaps even Ling Qianni would have just died by Yunche's hands. They had battled within the Imperial City, and countless people within the Imperial City had personally witnessed it. Moreover, Xie Qingyu had come to assist Yunche under the name of Frozen Cloud's Guard, and didn't hesitate to attack against Ling Qianni. Yunche's strength alone is already incomparably dreadful, but behind him there was actually Frozen Cloud's Guard's protection in full strength as well. Also, it has been said that everyone present had heard the 4 words, Frozen and Divine Arts. Xie Qingyu may have already successfully cultivated the Frozen Cloud's Guard's unmatched profound art in the legends. Even Ling Qianni could not do anything but face defeat against Yunche and Xie Qingyu joining forces as husband and wife. In the entire Blue Wind, simply no one would be their match. Xiao Jietian fell back onto his chair, his head fully covered in sweat. Sect Master, after Yunche heavily injured Ling Qianni, his own strength had also been greatly exhausted, and he had even fainted on the spot. He must be extremely weak right now, should we? Even though Xiao Buyin didn't continue his words, his tone and expression in his eyes had already conveyed the intent clear enough. Xiao Juetian's brow slightly moved, and after that he suddenly asked, "Did Xia Qingyu leave?" The moment he heard these words, Xiao Buyin's complexion slightly changed. As he then shook his head, "She took Yun Che to the Blue Wind Imperial Palace and hadn't come out yet. It is said that Frozen End Divine Arts is a peerless profound art whose might even surpasses the Heavenly Sword Divine Arts. If Xia Qingyu has really successfully cultivated it, then even my father may not be her match. What do we even have to assassinate Yun Che under Xia Qingyu's protection? If the assassination fails and leaks our tracks, then we would no longer have the last bit of leeway of compromise," Xiao Juetian said seeping with bitterness. He abruptly stood up and said, "Prepare the purple-veined heaven crystal, purple jade golden scale ointment, and scarlet eagle profound blood right away. You will personally go visit Yun Che to wish him well. Also, bring 15 kilograms of purple crystals, 10 kilograms of white profound jade. Also, from amongst the female disciples below 18 years of age in the clan, pick out 3 female disciples with superior aptitude and looks and gift them to Yun Che. Depart before night falls today, and make sure everything arrives before Yun Che's injuries are healed. Purple-veined heaven crystal, purple jade golden scale ointment, scarlet eagle profound blood." These were the 3 rarest and most valuable amongst the tens of thousands of miraculous medicines Xiao sect possessed. In order to express his sincerity toward Yun Che, it could be said that Xiao Juetian had steeled his heart and spent the capital of blood. Hearing these, Xiao Buyin's flesh hurted so much that his entire body trembled non-stop, but since things had already come to this point, facing the threat of the clan being annihilated, they also had no other choices. Yun Che was unconscious for an entire 2 days before he finally woke up. The main reason why he fainted for so long wasn't because of too much overdrafting of strength, but was because the mental exhaustion was overly enormous. After all, with his current abilities, using the Dragon Soul domain was too far-fetched. "You're awake." The moment Yun Che opened his eyes, a clear and cool voice rang beside his ears. He saw himself currently laying atop a soft bed, and around it was an extravagant draping curtain embroidered with golden feathered phoenixes. A hint of a faint, pleasing fragrance traveled to the tip of his nose. He turned his gaze to the side, and saw Xia Qingyu's graceful silhouette beside the bed. "Qingyu," Yun Che called out, his voice somewhat dry and bitter, as his body was still filled with a heavy sense of feebleness. "How many days did I sleep?" 2 days, Xia Qingyu turned around. "I'll go call them." "Ah, wait." Yun Che hastily called her to stop, and Xia Qingyu's footsteps also stopped with it. "This time, it's really fortunate that you came," Yun Che said as he smiled. Xia Qingyu half turned her body around. Her voice was serene and cool, but also gentle. "Without me, Ling Qianli wouldn't be able to kill you all the same. Even if he can't kill me, I would only be able to run away flustered in the end. But with you, I was able to make him go back with an ashen face. The outcome's entirely different. Ling Qianli being heavily wounded by you, is being widely spread outside. The title of Blue Wind's #1 can already change its ownership." Xia Qingyu took a glance at Yun Che. "Is that so?" But such things like titles had always been the most useless of things, Yun Che said very indifferently. His pair of eyes looked straight at Xia Qingyu, and he suddenly said, "Qingyu, can you come a little closer? I feel like I have not taken a good look at you for a very long time." The conversation that suddenly became dubious, instantly making Xia Qingyu's breathing become a little disordered. Her body didn't move, but after a little while, she still faintly moved her steps and sat down beside the bed. Yun Che also sat up at this moment. Even though his body was sluggish, his profound energy wasn't empty. In these 2 days of unconsciousness, his profound strength had already recovered to about 1/3. Since he had woke up now, his recovery speed would also speed up by several times. The moment Xia Qingyu sat down on the bedside, he suddenly reached out his arms, and carefully hugged onto Xia Qingyu's shoulders. Xia Qingyu's body visibly stiffened a bit, and she subconsciously wanted to move away. "You. Qingyu, close your eyes." Yun Che gently, yet resolutely, hugged her from behind. His arms slowly slid down from her shoulders slowly onto her willow branch-like tender waist. Looking at Xie Qingyu from a close distance, her features were perfect to the point of nearing fantasy. What are you going to do? Being suddenly hugged by him like that, Xie Qingyu's breath completely went into disorder. Her entire body had even froze right there. For a while, she didn't even know whether she should struggle and break away or not. Yun Che's face slowly neared, and a voice as if carrying the power of magic rang beside her ears. Qingyu, my wife, we have almost been married for 3 years already, yet in these 3 years of being husband and wife, I have never kissed you before. This time, will you let me give you a kiss? Yun Che's voice came closer and closer. The warm and damp breath slowly moved from beside her ears to her cheek, and even touched her lips. Xie Qingyu's entire body went stiff. She, who had never had experienced such things, almost lost all the capability to think, and her entire person that was a lofty lotus of ice, seemed to have turned into a wooden doll. Yun Che's cheek slowly neared. Just as he was about to touch Xie Qingyu's lips, a surge of flustered, yet ice-cold energy suddenly blasted him away. Xie Qingyu stood up, not daring to look at him in the eyes. Uttering a, "I'll go tell them you're awake," somewhat flusteredly, she then left as if fleeing. Yun Che's head crashed onto the wall by the push, the pain making him bare his teeth. He stroked the place that was bumped, and exasperatedly muttered in a low voice, "Once I reach Sky Profound Realm, I'll force one on you no matter what." Oh, ouch, oh. Not long after Xie Qingyu had left, the room door opened once again. Xiao Lingxi had rushed into the room hurriedly, and behind her was Xiao Lai with an equally anxious expression. "Little Che, you're awake." Xiao Lingxi made a flying pounce. "How are you feeling now?" "Anywhere feeling uncomfortable." Yun Che had already finished changing. He jumped off his bed and replied easily, "Don't worry, I'm all right. I was only weak, and did not suffer any injuries. I've mostly recovered after 2 days of sleep." Yun Che's movements were swift and stable. His face also did not seem to show any peculiarities. Xiao Lingxi finally heaved a sigh of relief. As Xiao Lai walked over, he smiled and said, "It's good if you're all right. Don't act tough just to assure us." Yun Che pounded his chest and replied confidently, "Please rest assured, Grandpa. At the Blue Fire region, you have already personally witnessed my body's recovery abilities. Are you used to living here so far?" Xiao Lai smiled and replied while appearing to be lost in his thoughts, "I have lived excellently here. To visit the Imperial City has always been a wish of mine. Never would I dare imagine that not only did I manage to come here, I could still enter the Imperial Palace with the Emperor personally welcoming us and throwing a banquet for us. Before this, such things were even considered too much for dreams." When Xiao Lai arrived, not only had Kang Wanha personally welcomed him, he had also personally looked after him. As the emperor of the nation, not only did he treat him courteously, he was also respectful. He would personally accompany them in their 3 meals each day. He served them the state banquet, and even made him stay in the chambers meant for neighboring emperors. Xiao Lai naturally understood that being treated like that by the emperor was definitely due to Yun Che. These 2 days especially, after Yun Che and Xie Qingyu defeated Ling Qianli together, Kang Wanha treated him with even more courtesy and respect. Within the palace, from the palace guards and eunuchs, to the princes and ministers, all of them treated him with respect and revealed signs of flattery. Because he was Yun Che's grandfather. All these, still seemed like a dream. "If you like it here, you and little aunt can stay within the Imperial City in the future." Yun Che immediately suggested, "If you don't want to, going the New Moon City is not bad too. Not long ago, I had already greeted Senior Sikong from the New Moon Profound Palace. If Sikong Han sees Grandpa, he would be elated. It's not far from Floating Cloud City too. If Grandpa misses home, you can go back at any time." Yun Che's status was originally already flourishing. Now that he had defeated Ling Qianli and indirectly became the strongest person in the Blue Wind Empire, Xiao Lai knew that as his grandfather, no matter where he went, people would line up begging to welcome him. Xiao Lai replied laughingly, "Lingxi likes this place very much, and the few days I was here have been pleasing. At the moment, I don't have plans on leaving yet. Those matters can be discussed in the future." Ha 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 ha. An authoritative yet cheerful laughter came from outside. We have been chatting enjoyably with Brother Xiao lately. If Brother Xiao wants to leave, we will miss him tremendously. The laughter came from Kang Wanhe, who walked in side by side with Kang Yu. He was dressed in his golden dragon robe. Behind him was Dongfang Xiu, who was 3 steps behind them. As he entered, he immediately looked at Yunche. Kang Wanhe's face was now flushed and his voice was strong. His gaze was also strong and sharp. Even his hair that had already turned white when he was lying in bed half dead last month was now a thick black. It was as though he was another person altogether. With the abundance of resources in the Imperial Palace, Kang Wanhe's recovery rate was much faster than Yunche had mentioned. Kang Wanhe felt deep gratitude towards Yunche. His courtesy towards Xiao Lai was partly due to Yunche's influence, but was mainly out of gratitude towards him. Yunche had not only saved his life, but also the life of the entire Blue Wind Imperial family. What Kang Wanhe said had stunned Kang Yu as she said, "Father, Grandfather Xiao is junior brother Yun's grandfather. You addressing him as brother? Wouldn't that be messing up the seniority?" Judging by age, Kang Wanhe was only a few years younger than Xiao Lai. However, after the disaster that he went through the past few years, he treated his only daughter with gratitude and doting. Once she finished speaking, Kang Wanhe became embarrassed and laughed loudly. Yes, yes. Yu's scolding was right. We cannot mess up the seniority. Then, we shall refer to you as Senior Xiao. This cannot be. Xiao Lai was hugely shocked as he frantically placed his hands together respectfully. If your majesty were to call me like that, I am truly undeserving. Kang Yu smiled instantly, dragging along her elegant phoenix dress forward as she gently spoke, Junior brother Yun. You've just woken up, your body must still be weak. It's better for you to rest in bed. No need. Yunche pounded his chest, I know my body well. I'm definitely not as delicate as Senior thinks. Ha ha. Kang Wanhe laughed loudly. He has the ability to defeat the Sword Saint. We are not worried about him at all. You don't have to be this worried. You have barely slept or ate these past 2 days, and visited every hour. We are more worried about you. Father, in front of so many people, Kang Wanhe completely exposed her feelings without reserve. She uttered an elegant cry and lowered her head, avoiding everyone's gaze. Her actions made Kang Wanhe and Dongfang Xiu unable to hide their laughter. Yunche felt touched and he laughed slightly before looking at Kang Wanhe and asking, Your Majesty, Palace Chief Dongfang, in these 2 days that I'm unconscious, did anyone try to break in? Dongfang Xiu shook his head without hesitation. Originally, I was also afraid that someone might attempt to assassinate you while you were unconscious and raised security. However, it seemed as though I was too worried as the palace was very calm. No one tried to intrude. Maybe it was because Xia Fairy stayed in the palace. Even though they had such intentions, they were wary of Xia Fairy and did not dare to attempt it. Following the growth of Yunche's reputation, more and more people knew of his past, which had been spread widely. Among those, his grudges with the Xiao sect Xiao Kuangyun were naturally included. What Dongfang Xiu was wary of the past 2 days was also Xiao sect. However, there were numerous people bringing gifts to visit. Kang Wanhe laughed. There are more than 1,000 various big and small sects and clans bringing you elixirs and treasures. Your gifts are piling up like a mountain, and even though our palace is big, we almost have no more space to keep your gifts. Even though we have been the emperor for such a long time, we have never seen such a sight before. Ha 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 ha. Among them, Xiao sect's gifts were the most precious. Kang Yu said, they had sent a purple-veined heaven crystal, purple jade golden scale ointment, and the scarlet eagle profound blood, which are all invaluable treasures. Furthermore, they also sent 15 kilograms of purple crystals and 10 kilograms of white profound jade, which is much more than the palace had managed to accumulate for the past tens of years. Furthermore, Kang Yu suddenly laughed dubiously. They also sent 3 extremely great beauties who are not even 20 yet. What? What great beauties? Hearing this, Xiao Lingxi puffed her lips and stamped, replying angrily, they are clearly ugly monsters. They are hundreds and thousands of times below me and Princess Sis. Little Che would never look at them. Isn't that right, Little Che? Amen, amen. Yun Che immediately nodded continuously, replying with a righteous tone, how could those commoners compare to my little aunt and senior sister? I would never look at them. Send them back where they came from. Oh, but if little aunt is willing, you can make them your servants. No way. I don't want them. Xiao Lingxi replied happily. Xiao sect's gifts were also personally sent by Great Elder Xiao Boyun, and he has not left yet. He claims to want to meet you after you wake up. Are you interested in meeting him? Kang Wanhe asked with a complicated expression. In the past, any elders from the 4 major sects who entered the palace were all arrogant, and some had even treated the emperor without respect. Even if they broke the rules, the emperor still treated them kindly. This time, however, Xiao sect's first elder Xiao Boyun was extremely respectful after entering the palace. He was humble, courteous, and amiable, which was a huge difference. This made Kang Wanhe unable to remain calm. In this world, it was indeed power that was respected. Only absolute power was able to command respect. Even though the Blue Wind Imperial Palace seemed to possess absolute authority, in front of absolute power, they were totally insignificant. About that, Yun Che nodded slightly and laughed. Of course I'll meet him. Xiao sect's great elder delivered such valuable gifts from such a distance away. How can I just let him walk away like that? All right. Kang Wanhe nodded. We have heard of your grudges with the Xiao sect. How you want to handle it is up to your wishes. Asterisk. Although he was the emperor, Kang Wanhe suddenly started to speak before stopping halfway, constantly hesitating about what he wanted to say. Yun Che moved his lips a little, carefully asking, does your majesty still have any instructions for Yun Che? It's not instructions per se, but... It's asterisk. Kang Wanhe cleared his throat and he finally spoke clearly. He kept a straight face and looked at Yun Che. Yun Che, this life of ours was saved by you. If not for you, we would have already passed on without knowing why. And now, we are still alive thanks to you. Even though the internal struggle between the imperial family is still unsettled, we still have to thank heavens. We do not have any more things that we are unsatisfied with, except for one matter that we still worry day and night about. The matter that your majesty worries about day and night about is, Yun Che suddenly had a prediction. Kang Wanhe stepped forward, pulled Kang Yu closer and said with a doting face filled with longing, Yua is our only daughter. All these years, we have been sabotaged by evil people and our unfilial sons. Only Yua accompanied us through all these, working hard for us, suffering for us, and even found a benefactor like you who saved both our fates. Our only wish now is for Yua to find true happiness in marriage. Unwittingly, Yua is already 21. In the whole 1,000-year history of the imperial family, princesses who have not married by 20 are exceptionally rare. As her father, we cannot eat and sleep properly, and worry constantly, wash our face with tears daily in hopes for my daughter to find her Mr. Right. If this wish comes true, we are willing to even lose 30 years of my life. If Yua is still unable to get married by this year, we would really be sorry towards her and cannot face her queen mother in death. As Kang Wanhe spoke, his eyes were red with tears and it seemed as though he was about to cry. What Kang Wanhe had said caused Yun Che's face to twitch, and what he said next made him feel overwhelmed. We can see that Yua is not interested in any other man except for you, and her heart is strongly devoted towards you. If you have the same feelings for Yua, that would be excellent. If you marry Yua, even if we die now, it would be without regrets. If you do not have the same feelings, such matters naturally cannot be forced. It is only a pity that Yua can only long for you hopelessly and remain single for her entire life. It would be our fault. Episode 52 is end here. Next episode coming tomorrow. Thanks for watching.